All right, in this video, we're going to go ahead and take a look at multiplying and dividing integers. And so what we're going to do is first take a look at the rules for them, and that basically governs the whole, basically how to do them. And so if we're looking at two things that are the same side, if you are multiplying a positive or dividing a positive times a positive, you're going to go ahead and get a positive result. And likewise, if you're going to multiply a negative times a negative or divide a negative by a negative, you're going to get a positive result. The only time it's going to be different is that if you multiply or divide a negative times a positive or a positive times a negative. That's going to give you a negative result. And if you if it has different signs, it's negative. Same signs, it's positive. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's take off from there and take a look at some of these examples. Now, first things first is that I want to draw your attention up here is that just know that the parentheses, you know, that that time sign from way back when has now been replaced by these parentheses when you are multiplying. So this 6 times 5 is 30, and this also means 6 times 5 with the parentheses, which is 30, okay? So that said, let's go ahead and take a look at these examples starting on the left-hand side. So first of all, we got a positive times a positive. So in that case, we don't need to worry about it being negative, and 2 times 7 is going to give us 14. And likewise, if we have a negative times a negative, so there's our negative and negative, we know it's going to be positive, so we don't need to worry about putting a negative sign. And then we go ahead and we got 4 times 8, which is going to give us 32. Okay, so that said, here's the other examples where when I notice I have a negative, I'm multiplying by a negative, the first thing that I do is I put a negative there so I don't forget it. And then I just need to worry about multiplying those two numbers. So we know that 9 times 7 is 63, but it's going to be a negative 63 as it's a negative times a positive. And likewise, when we got a positive times a negative, we're going to get a negative, and then our 2 times 1, that's going to give us a negative 2. All right. And sometimes we got to line them all up in a row in these next examples here that the sign may flip multiple times. What most students like to do is that they just like to start with the leftmost here, right, and do that problem. It's a positive times a negative, so that's going to give me a negative 12, bring down the parentheses, and bring down the negative 1. And now I got a negative times a negative, that's going to be a positive, and 12 times 1 is going to give me positive 12. Okay? And likewise, if I were to, I can do this as many times as need be, right? I got a negative times a negative, and so that's going to give me a positive 21 right there. And now I'm going to bring down the rest part of the problem. And so now I got a positive times a negative. That's going to give me a negative result. So 21 times 2 is going to be a negative 42 right there. And now I got another negative times a negative. And at the end of the day, that's going to give me a positive. And when I multiply those, that's going to give me 84. Okay. Now, works out the exact same way when we have this business of dividing. Okay. So when we're dividing these out, so 3 goes into 18. We know that we're going to divide that out. That's going to give me, oops, I don't want that. I want this right here, 6, okay? And likewise, if I have a negative divided by a negative like that, that's just going to go ahead and give me a positive because they have the like signs, and so that's going to give me a positive 6. So whether you are going to be dividing into a negative or dividing by a negative, the result itself is going to be negative because the signs don't match. Okay, we don't have a negative on the top and the bottom, so this will give me a -6, and this will be the same thing, a -6 right there. Now, some of the things that sometimes it doesn't go in there evenly, and you're just asked to go ahead and leave the fraction as is. And so oftentimes with these, we just go ahead and we simplify them down nicely. So if this is going to be a negative right here divided by a positive, the whole fraction is going to be a negative. So oftentimes we just put I'll just put an arrow right here, and we put a negative sign out in front, and that'd be a -3/5. And likewise, if I'm dividing by a negative into a positive, I would have the same result, a -3/5. However, if I have a negative divided by a negative, I can simplify that down into +3/5. Okay, so that's kind of like a refresher about positives and negatives, integers, multiplying them out, and hope that helps, and I will see you in the next video.